remember back in the day, not many years ago, when we were doing drawing-based construction and documentation basically out of BIM, you had a title block, and in the title block there was a field called project number and another one called project name, client address, revision date, drawing number. That information is going away when we're moving from drawing-based to model-based construction. And the logic behind the data that was in the title block is different. Sometimes you have a ceiling plan, sometimes you have a floor plan, sometimes you have a reinforcement drawing, and so on. And these drawings would show different type of information. But on every single drawing, you'd have to have the same project name and project number. Not so much for construction probably, but more for operations and maintenance. Like the analog twin, your drawing set, they should all have the same data. Now when we're moving towards like digital twin and how BIM maybe can be an underlay or foundation for digital twin, it is equally important that all the elements inside of the models all contain this type of information. Maybe in the future, we don't need every single element to contain that information, but at least refer to that information so people can find it. When you're a building owner and you have a big data set of multiple buildings, it is very important, if not vital, to be able to filter based on this data. Project name, project number, blah, blah, blah. So the problem we're seeing in design teams when we have to deal with this is that it gets really difficult to write that data to the elements as projects are changing and evolving all the time. So I want to show you how you can do that with Anchor. And it's very, very simple, almost like embarrassingly simple, but hang in there and let's get through the embarrassment together. I've opened an Anchor property just to look at I'm selecting a wall and just to look at the data that's on this wall in the Anchor database. I've got something like completion lead, complex number. Complex number in this case is probably like as close to a project number that you're getting. So this number actually means something for the building owner. Same thing here, delivery lead. This is actually a contract number. So the contract number K201 is referring to a contract basically for a discipline. And it needs to be filled in on every single element in the deliverable. So the way we do this in Anchor today, and I'll use a very simple example. Let's take this wall here and then copy it. I don't know, over here maybe. So in this case, I'm adding a new wall, and then of course when I click on it, I haven't saved my file and there's no data on it. So the key here is that when I save my file and I push my changes, this new wall inside of the local file to the central file and then on to the building owner and contractor and construction site and so on, it is extremely important that the data that needs to be on that wall gets on that wall. So in this case, I'm clicking on it and you can see that some of these data is starting to appear. I've got the complex number, I've got the LOD, the LOI, project number, and published date. Some of this data is being written in different ways and based on different logic, but the complex number is one property that is actually being written to every single element in the entire project. So you remember I clicked on this wall and it has a long list of data. If I click on this wall now, oh, wow, look, there's a bunch of new data. So actually in the background, while I was talking, the Anchor database was creating all this data for this wall. And all I had to do was save the Revit file and then execute a bunch of rules that wrote that data for me. That means that at any point in time, anyone can go and export this file to the owner or the contractor if you want, and the data is going to be attached to that element. Now, I just want to look quickly into how I did that in Anchor. So I'm opening the Anchor database in a Chrome window. I've got my project here, the dashboard, and I'm going to open my populate cards. I've got a card called all that is basically doesn't have any filter in it. So this way I write these rules to all the elements in the entire project. I'm writing a family name to an Anchor property called family name. Here's the complex number and the project number, basically the data I was referring to before. And the cool thing about this is that I've attached this all population rule to an automation rule that's called run everything, that is enabled, and I've set up the rule so that it runs at noon every day, and also on triggers, basically when I'm syncing my Revit file or uploading a new CSV or anything. I've got a bunch of different population rules that I'm running in sequence, and then I'm capping it off with 3 validation rules at the end. So I usually set up my Anchor workflow like this. A bunch of population rules first in a little bit of a logical sequence, and then the validation afterwards, because you want to validate on the fresh data, basically. So this is all it takes. And with this setup intact, you can deploy this workflow to your entire team. It doesn't really matter how many architects and engineers are working on your project, but they will always, whenever they push new elements to the central model, trigger these rules and then auto-create a bunch of information that is vital for your owner.